The natural environment of Africa and the natural resources which Africa has are an irreplaceable part of African heritage and are important to the continent and human beings as a whole. It consists of grasslands, wetlands, mountains, deserts, rainforests and marine areas which are home to thousands of species of plants and animals. But it is all being destroyed. It is disappearing. Environmental degradation is a monster in the making. All around us, every day, we continue to damage the environment. You may think it all does not affect you, but it does. The state of the environment directly and indirectly affects the state of your health, the state of your family's health, the social status of your community, the economic development of your country, and much more. An estimated 11 million children, or about 1 in 5, will not live to see their 5th birthday, mainly because of preventable environment-related diseases. Each of us has a responsibility to ensure environmental conservation. There are systems that are being put in place in each country to help you. Currently, many different African governments have committed to several regional and international agreements requiring them to protect the environment. These agreements, called multilateral environmental agreements, are legally binding agreements between 3 or more countries about the environment. Some of the regional and international multilateral environmental agreements that have been formulated include the African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, that is, the Maputo Convention. Nature is the material world, such as mountains, trees, animals, or rivers, surrounding humans and existing independently of human activities. Natural resources are naturally occurring materials such as fertile land, soil, water, minerals, etc., which can be used by man and are either renewable or non-renewable. The main objectives of this convention are to promote environmental protection and to encourage the conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. The depletion of natural resources directly affects you as we experience food shortages, flooding, and other natural disasters that affect human health and socio-economic development. The Nairobi and Abidjan Conventions were established to improve the control of marine pollution and the management of marine and coastal resources. The conventions aim to prevent, reduce, and combat pollution caused by discharges from ships, dumping of wastes, and other matter at sea from ships or aircrafts, discharges from rivers, estuaries, and coastal establishments. Protect and preserve rare or fragile ecosystems, as well as rare, depleted, threatened, or endangered species of wild fauna and flora and their habitats. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification was drawn to combat desertification and lessen the effects of drought. The livelihoods of over 1 billion people in more than 100 countries are in danger because of desertification. In Africa, 66% of the total land area is arid or semi-arid. Desertification is being made into a bigger problem by, among others, poverty, unequal land distribution, refugee movement, and modernization, which interrupts traditional farming practices. It has played a part in armed conflict in arid lands, having contributed to political instability, starvation, and social breakdown in places such as Somalia and northern Kenya. The Bamako Convention on the Ban on the Import into Africa and the Control of Transboundary Movement and Management of Hazardous Wastes is a treaty of African nations prohibiting the import of any hazardous wastes, including radioactive waste. It was drawn up due to the need to prohibit trade of hazardous waste to less developed countries, and from the realization that many developed nations were exporting toxic wastes to Africa. There still exist loopholes which allow unscrupulous dealers to export goods meant for waste as second-hand or charitable items. The Kyoto Protocol commits the industrialized nations and the European community to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is aimed at fighting global warming, which is the rising average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere and oceans, and is caused by increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases produced by human activities, such as deforestation and burning of fossil fuels. With this protocol, countries commit themselves to a reduction of certain greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide. At present, the two primary sources of carbon dioxide emissions are from burning coal, used for electricity generation, and petroleum, used for motor transport. The Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer is dedicated to the protection of the Earth's ozone layer. The ozone layer is a layer of the Earth's atmosphere which contains relatively high concentrations of ozone. This layer absorbs 97 to 99% of the sun's high-frequency ultraviolet light. Depletion of the ozone layer would lead to an increase in ultraviolet radiation, resulting in an increase in skin cancer and damage to crops and to marine life. The Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer was designed to reduce the production and consumption of ozone-depleting substances in order to reduce their large quantity in the atmosphere and so protect the Earth's delicate ozone layer. These ozone-depleting substances have been used in aerosol sprays, refrigerating, agriculture, energy production, and laboratory measurement. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna aims to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten the survival of the species in the wild. Roughly 5,000 species of animals and 28,000 species of plants are protected by CITES against overexploitation through international trade. Any trade in these species requires export and import permits. Animals protected include gorillas, chimpanzees, leopards, cheetahs, African and all rhinoceros. The Bonn Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals aims to protect terrestrial, marine, and avian migratory species throughout their range. The parties make every effort towards strictly protecting animals, conserving or restoring the places where they live, lessening obstacles to migration, and controlling other factors that might endanger them. These include gorillas, turtles, and flamingos, among others. The Rotterdam Convention on the Prior Informed Consent Procedure for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade promotes shared responsibilities in relation to importation of hazardous chemicals. The convention promotes open exchange of information and calls on exporters of hazardous chemicals to use proper labeling, including directions on safe handling, and inform purchasers of any known restrictions or bans. Signatory nations can decide whether to allow or ban the importation of chemicals listed in the treaty, and exporting countries are obliged to make sure that producers within their jurisdiction comply. The Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants aims to eliminate or restrict the production and use of persistent gaseous, liquid or solid chemical compounds that are resistant to environmental degradation. These persistent organic pollutants persist in the environment and are capable of long-range transport, and accumulate in human and animal tissue, increase in food chains, and have potential significant impacts on human health and the environment. Examples of projects based on implementation of the multilateral environmental agreements are many. These include the African Union Department of Rural Economy and Agriculture through the Multilateral Environmental Agreements Project, which is supporting the development and updating of biosafety laws in Malawi and Mauritania. The Ruwenzori in western Uganda is the highest mountain range in Africa, with 6 glacial peaks. The Ruwenzori Ramsar site covers 99,500 hectares of the mountainous region. The National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, in Uganda has started restoration of the water catchment areas with the initial focus on Lake Victoria shores and the River Nile banks. South Africa presently has 20 sites designated as wetlands of international importance, with a surface area of 553,178 hectares. Carbon credits are being traded in Kenya. Despite these being legally binding agreements, there are several challenges in implementing them. These include inadequate legislation and policy framework for implementation, financial constraints, lack of qualified personnel and expertise to assist in policy formulation, lack of in-depth understanding of contents of these multilateral environmental agreements, lack of public awareness. Some countries take a long time before ratifying the agreements. Political activities take attention away from the environmental issues. Ignorance. Lack of punitive measures for failing to comply with the agreements. Some countries do not yet clearly see the benefits of being part of these agreements. Lack of commitment. Lack of commissions to follow up on the ratification, implementation, and enforcement of national legislations on the conventions. Despite facing the mentioned challenges, the importance of the environment and environmental conservation cannot be overstated. Each one of us, no matter who you are, teacher, farmer, musician, student, driver, accountant, engineer, pilot. Each of our actions determines the quality of life now and in the future. This message is a call for you to action, a call for you to know the repercussions of your actions and the role that you can play in ensuring protection of the environment. You can start by finding out more about the environmental agreements and what part you need to play in their implementation. Remember that even a little effort by you towards environmental conservation highly matters. Engage yourself in projects that will make a difference. Plant trees. Explore the use of biogas. Explore much more. Be responsible. In order to get more information about these and more multilateral environmental agreements, visit the African Union Commission's website at www.au.int or the UNEP website at www.unep.org.